My girlfriend told me I wasn't ambitious enough for her, so I let her go, built a 6-figure business, and she texts me every weekend now. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and if I'm being honest, my entire adult life up until a few years ago revolved around one person, my college girlfriend. I met her during my sophomore year, in the middle of a crowded campus library. She smiled at me when I dropped an entire stack of books on the floor, and from that moment, it felt like she was it. She had this kind of presence that made me feel like the luckiest guy alive. At the time, I didn't have much. I was balancing classes with part-time jobs that barely paid for textbooks, let alone any kind of glamorous lifestyle. But I had dreams, big ones. I'd talk about starting something of my own, building a life where I wasn't just working for someone else. She used to listen with this half smile, the kind that made me feel both encouraged and judged at the same time. We were inseparable for a while. Study dates turned into late-night drives, and late-night drives turned into whispered promises about a future together. I really believed her when she said she didn't care about money, that what mattered was love and ambition. I held on to those words like they were gospel, thinking that my vision of someday building something from the ground up would be enough for her. But as months passed, little cracks began to show. It started with small ones about how I never seemed to have a plan. I'd laugh them off, but deep down, I felt this tightening in my chest. Like I was already on trial, and I hadn't even gotten the chance to prove myself yet, and I didn't know it then. But those tiny comments were the first signs of something much bigger, something that would eventually break me. At first I told myself I was overthinking it. Everyone jokes around in relationships, right? But the jokes kept coming. They shifted from playful to pointed, and I started noticing when she made them the most. Whenever we were around other people, she'd casually compare me to her best friend's boyfriend, who had just landed an internship at a big accounting firm. "Isn't it amazing how focused he is?" she'd say, glancing at me with that smirk that wasn't quite a smile. At dinners with her family, she'd make these little digs, wrapped in laughter, like, "Well, at least he tries." Everyone would chuckle, and I'd force myself to laugh too. Even though it felt like being stabbed in the ribs, inside, it killed me. I was already working 2 jobs, trying to juggle school and keep our relationship afloat. But no matter how hard I pushed myself, I felt invisible in her eyes. It wasn't about effort, it was about image. She wanted the kind of guy who wore pressed shirts and talked about stock options over wine. I was the guy handing out flyers on campus just to make rent. I remember one night, lying next to her while she scrolled through Instagram, showing me pictures of couples on trips to Europe or guys posing with their new cars. She laughed and said, "One day, maybe you'll get there." I smiled weakly, but inside, the words echoed like a sentence I'd never escape. That was when I first started to feel the shift. It wasn't just teasing anymore, it was disappointment. Her eyes didn't light up at my dreams. They rolled, and I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that no matter how much love I gave, it would never be enough. The night it all unraveled is burned into my memory like a scar. We were at this little Italian restaurant we used to love, the kind with dim lights and candles that always made the place feel more romantic than it actually was. I thought we were having a normal date night. I'd saved up to take her there, hoping maybe she'd see how much I was trying. But halfway through the meal, she put her fork down, folded her hands, and looked at me in a way I'll never forget. Calm, cold, like she'd already rehearsed it. "I just don't think you're ambitious enough for me," she said. For a second, I thought I misheard her. The clinking of silverware around us, the hum of quiet conversations, it all blurred out. My chest tightened, and I managed to whisper, "What do you mean?" She sighed like I was a child who couldn't keep up. "I need someone with drive, someone who wants more out of life than this." She gestured at the table, at me, at everything I was in that moment. I tried to defend myself. "I have plans. I've told you I want to start something. I'm just not there yet." But she shook her head. "Dreams are cute. Ambition is action, and I don't see it in you." Her words cut deeper than I can explain. They weren't shouted, they weren't cruel on the surface, but they dismantled me piece by piece. She wasn't just leaving me. She was telling me I'd never measure up. I paid the bill in silence. The ride home was a blur of headlights and hollow breathing. That night, we ended things. She packed it up with a hug and a simple line. "You'll find someone who's fine with this version of you." But the truth was, I wasn't fine with me anymore. The days after the breakup felt like I was walking through fog. Everything was muted, heavy, and slow, like my body was moving, but my soul had been left behind at that restaurant table. I'd wake up for work, drag myself through 10-hour shifts, come home to an empty apartment, and just sit in the dark. It was like life had been drained of color. Her words looped in my head like a curse. I don't think you're ambitious enough. No matter what I did, I couldn't escape them. I replayed every moment of our relationship, wondering if she had been thinking it all along, if every kiss, every "I love you," had been tainted with secret disappointment. I stopped talking to my friends because I didn't want to admit the truth, that I had been dumped not because of cheating, not because of distance, but because I wasn't good enough. I couldn't face their pity or worse, their agreement. Work became my prison. I picked up extra shifts at a retail store just to keep busy, but the fluorescent lights, the rude customers, the mindless routine, it all pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. I'd come home, collapse onto my bed fully clothed, and stare at the ceiling until sleep finally dragged me under. Some nights, I cried without even realizing it, the tears slipping out quietly as if my body couldn't hold the pain anymore. The worst moment came one night when I sat on the edge of my bed, holding my phone, scrolling through her Instagram. She looked radiant, out with friends, smiling like nothing had changed. Meanwhile, I felt like a ghost in my own life. That was my rock bottom, the moment I realized I wasn't just heartbroken. I was broken, and the terrifying part was, I didn't know if I'd ever climb out of it. I don't know if it was luck or fate. But around the time I was drowning in my own thoughts, a friend from college, one of the few people I hadn't pushed away, reached out. He asked me to grab coffee. At first, I almost said no. I didn't want anyone to see how low I'd sunk, but something in me whispered, just go. We sat in this tiny cafe downtown, and I must have looked like hell because he didn't bother with small talk. He just leaned forward and said, "Man, you've got to stop letting her words define you. You've always had ideas. You just never believed you could actually do something with them." It was such a simple statement, but it hit me harder than I expected. No pity, no sugarcoating, just truth. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something inside me. Not anger at her, not sadness, hunger. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. Instead of scrolling through her pictures, I started Googling ways to make money online. Freelancing, e-commerce, digital marketing, you name it, I read about it. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I had to. Soon, I was staying up until 3 a.m, watching tutorials, scribbling notes, trying little side hustles. Some of them flopped immediately, but every failure taught me something new. For the first time in months, I wasn't drowning, I was climbing. And even though I was exhausted from juggling work and late-night learning, I started waking up with purpose. It wasn't about proving her wrong anymore, it was about proving me wrong. Showing myself I wasn't just the version she walked away from, but I had no idea just how brutal that climb was about to get. Those first years felt like trying to build a house in the middle of a storm with nothing but bare hands. Every time I thought I had something figured out, it collapsed. I launched an online store that barely sold anything. I tried freelancing and got ghosted after putting in hours of work. I invested what little savings I had into a project that failed within weeks. People laughed at me. My coworkers at the retail job joked about my get-rich-quick schemes. Even my parents, though they meant well, would ask, "Why don't you just focus on a stable career?" Each question was a reminder that maybe everyone was right, maybe. I was just chasing smoke. But every failure came with a tiny spark of knowledge. I learned what not to do. I figured out how to market better, how to budget smarter, how to swallow rejection without letting it kill me. And those small lessons started to add up. I remember the first time I made $100 from something I built myself. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then came 1,000. Each little milestone felt like a rebellion against her words, like proof that I wasn't doomed to mediocrity. Still, the grind was brutal. Sleepless nights blurred into long days. I lived off instant noodles and cheap coffee, pouring every ounce of energy into my work. And yet, the Tao never fully left me. There were nights I stared at my computer screen and thought, maybe she was right. Maybe I'll never be enough. But then I'd hear my friend's voice in my head, reminding me that I had potential. That it wasn't about where I started, it was about refusing to stay there. And slowly, painfully, something inside me began to shift. It happened almost by accident. After years of scraping by, experimenting, failing, and starting over, one of my projects suddenly took off. I had been working on a digital product, nothing fancy, just something I believed in, and out of nowhere, it caught traction. One client turned into 5, and then those 5 referred me to 10 more. The growth was explosive, and for the first time, money started flowing in faster than I could process. I'll never forget the night I logged into my bank account and saw the number jump into 6 figures. My hands were shaking. I refreshed the screen over and over, convinced it had to be a glitch. It wasn't. After years of grinding in silence, after years of being the butt of jokes, I was finally standing on solid ground. But the crazy thing is, it wasn't pure joy I felt. Don't get me wrong, I celebrated. I went out, bought myself a decent meal that wasn't ramen, and for the first time in years, I slept without that knot of anxiety in my chest. But underneath the pride was a strange ache. Because the first thought that popped into my head wasn't I did it. It was, she never believed this. Her words still lingered, echoing even louder in the face of my success. It was like validation and reopening an old wound at the same time. I thought about all those nights she told me ambition was action, not dreams. And here I was, with more proof of ambition than she'd ever imagined. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the numbers, realizing I had climbed the mountain she swore I'd never reach. And yet, I couldn't shake the urge to hear her voice again, if only to tell her she was wrong. With money finally coming in, my life started to look different. I upgraded from the cramped apartment with peeling paint to a place that actually felt like home, bright windows, clean walls, a bed that didn't squeak every time I rolled over. I joined a gym, partly to burn off the years of stress, partly because I wanted to feel like I was rebuilding myself from the inside out. For the first time in forever, I wasn't surviving. I was living. I started traveling to short trips at first. Just being able to book a flight, walk through an airport, and know I had earned it felt surreal. I took pictures not to brag, but because I couldn't believe this was my life. People around me treated me differently now. Strangers respected me. Friends who once doubted me started calling me inspiring. And yet, even with all of that, I couldn't shake the ghost of her rejection. I'd be out on a date with someone new, laughing, having a good time. But in the back of my head, I'd hear her voice. Dreams are cute. Ambition is action. It was like a scar I carried everywhere, hidden under the surface. I realized something during this stage: success doesn't erase the past. It just makes it quieter. The hurt doesn't vanish when you buy nicer things or when people finally start believing in you. It lingers, and sometimes, in the quiet moments, it screamed louder than ever. But I told myself to keep going, because every day I kept moving forward. I was building a version of me that she'd never recognize. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best kind of revenge. It happened on a Saturday morning of all times. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through emails, when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. For a second, I thought it was spam. Then I saw her name. My stomach dropped. "Hey, how have you been?" Just 6 words. Casual, like she hadn't detonated my entire world years before. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room, but another part, the broken kid still stuck in that Italian restaurant, wanted to answer right away. I didn't reply, at least not then. But the messages kept coming, every weekend, like clockwork. At first, they were small check-ins. "Hope you're doing okay?" Then they grew bolder. "Saw your post, looks like you're doing amazing." And eventually, flirty. I missed those late-night drives we used to take. The audacity made me laugh bitterly. This was the same woman who told me I wasn't ambitious enough, who walked away like I was a failed investment. And now, suddenly, I was worth her attention again. One text in particular stopped me cold. She wrote, "I always knew you'd do something big. I just didn't think it would be this soon." That line burned, because she didn't always know. She doubted me when it mattered most. She crushed me when I needed belief, not abandonment. I showed the texts to a couple of friends, and their reactions were identical. Wide eyes, laughter, disbelief. "Dude, she's circling back because you made it," one said. "Don't you dare fall for that." Still, late at night, lying in bed, her words echoed. Not the new ones, the old ones. I don't think you're ambitious enough. And against my better judgment, I started to wonder what I would say if I finally answered. The more she texted, the harder it became to ignore the pull. Part of me wanted to block her outright, but another part, the wounded, insecure part, wanted to see her squirm. I imagined showing up to dinner in the suit I bought for client meetings, pulling up in the car I'd earned, and watching her realize what she had thrown away. That fantasy was intoxicating. 1. Friday night, she sent, "We should catch up. Just dinner, nothing serious." I stared at those words until my chest ached. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every rational thought screamed, "Don't do it." But the craving for validation was strong. I wanted her to see me now, not the broke, heartbroken guy she left behind. I vented to my friends, sent them screenshots. Every single one said the same thing. She doesn't want you. She wants the life you've built. Don't give her the satisfaction. One even said, if you meet her. She twisted to make herself the victim. Their words made sense, but alone at night, it was harder to hold on to logic. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining her across the table, trying to explain herself. I pictured myself leaning back, smiling, and finally saying, "Remember when you told me I wasn't ambitious enough?" That line alone felt like it could heal something inside me, but deep down, I knew it was dangerous. Because once I opened that door, even just for dinner, she'd step back into my life. And if she could hurt me once, what would stop her from doing it again? Still, the temptation sat there, glowing on my phone screen, daring me to answer. Eventually, I caved it not to dinner, but to finally responding. I'd had enough of her weekend messages piling up like unanswered ghosts. One Sunday morning, after another flirty "miss you" text, I typed back, "Funny, you told me I wasn't ambitious enough." I stared at the bubble turning into 3 little dots as she typed back. Her reply came fast. "I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to motivate you." The words made my blood boil. I remembered the night she looked me dead in the eye and told me my dreams were cute. That wasn't motivation, that was dismissal. So I told her straight, "No, you meant it. You didn't believe in me, and that's fine. But don't rewrite history now that things look different." She tried again. "You're twisting it. I always knew you'd be successful. I just wanted to push you harder." Reading that, I realized something. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She was reaching out because she wanted a piece of the life she thought I couldn't build. She wanted to step back into a story where she could pretend she never doubted me. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger or longing. I felt clarity. I didn't need to prove anything to her anymore. I didn't need her apology, her approval, or her presence. So I ended it with one last message. "I've moved on. Please stop texting me." I hit send, blocked her number, and sat back. The silence that followed wasn't heavy yet, was freeing. But even in that silence, I knew the story wasn't finished. Because the real closure wasn't about shutting her out, it was about what I finally realized about myself. After I blocked her, something inside me shifted. For years, I had carried her words like chains, letting them define how I saw myself. Even when I was successful, even when the money started rolling in, a part of me still felt like that kid in the restaurant being told he wasn't enough. But cutting her off, that was the real victory. Not the 6 figures, not the lifestyle changes, not the respect from people who once doubted me. It was silence. It was peace. Funny thing is, she still tries to reach me through mutual friends, through social media. Every weekend, like clockwork, there's some attempt to remind me she exists. And every time, I feel nothing. No temptation, no anger, just distance. The version of me that once begged for her approval doesn't live here anymore. Started realizing something important. Revenge isn't the flashy Instagram posts or the expensive car. It's waking up every morning without bitterness weighing you down. It's knowing that the person who broke you no longer has the power to define you. Tell myself this often. Her rejection was the best thing that ever happened to me, because without it, I might never have hit rock bottom. I might never have found the fire to build the life I have now. Pain forced me to grow, and growth gave me freedom. So when people ask if I'd ever take her back, I just laugh. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm free. And the sweetest part, I didn't need to prove her wrong. I just needed to prove myself right. And that, to me, will always be the real story the moment I stop chasing validation and finally became enough for myself.